The rain came down in sheets, hammering the windshield of my pickup truck as I pulled into the gravel lot outside the Anchor Cafe. My hands shook, not from the cold, but from the fire in my chest that had been burning since I found the note in Elena's coat pocket. Meet me at the cafe, 7 p.m., Liam. I'd known something was wrong for months. Elena, my wife of 8 years, had been slipping away, her laughter rarer, her touch fleeting, her eyes always somewhere else. I thought it was the stress of her new job at the community center, or maybe the weight of our small-town life in Astoria, Oregon, where everyone knew your business before you did. But then I found the note, scribbled in a stranger's hand, and it all clicked. Liam. The name felt like a blade. I stepped out into the rain, my boots splashing in puddles, and saw him through the cafe's fogged-up window. Liam Harper, the golden boy of Astoria High a decade ago, now a real estate agent with a smile that could sell sand in a desert. He sat at a corner table, his tailored coat draped over the chair, sipping coffee like he hadn't just turned my world upside down. Elena was there too, her dark hair pulled back, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. She hadn't seen me yet. I pushed through the door, the bell jingling like a warning shot. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and damp wool, and every head turned. Locals loved a scene. Liam looked up, his blue eyes catching mine, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in them. Not fear, not arrogance. Something softer, like regret. Elliot, he said, standing, his voice steady but low. I didn't expect. Save it. I cut him off, my voice louder than I meant. Elena's head snapped up, her brown eyes wide with panic. You think you can just sneak around with my wife, and I won't find out? The cafe went silent, forks frozen mid-bite. Elena stood, her chair scraping the floor. Elliot, please, let's go outside. No, I said, my gaze locked on Liam. I want to hear it from him. Why her? Why my wife? Liam's jaw tightened, and he glanced at Elena, a look that carried more weight than I could decode. It's not what you think, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then tell me what it is. I shouted, stepping closer, my fists clenched. The rain pounded the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. I'd come here to confront the man stealing my wife, to demand answers, to maybe even throw a punch. But the way Liam looked at me, steady, unguarded, like he was carrying a secret heavier than mine, made my heart lurch. Elliot, he said, his voice breaking, I'm not in love with Elena. I'm in love with you. The words hit like a freight train, stealing my breath, my anger, my certainty. The cafe seemed to vanish, the rain fading to a distant hum. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, and I realized she'd known. She'd known all along. I don't remember sitting down, but somehow I was in a chair, the world spinning like I'd been sucker punched. Liam sat across from me, his hands folded on the table, his eyes searching mine for something I didn't know how to give. Elena hovered nearby, her face a mask of guilt and relief, like she'd been carrying this secret too long. Explain, I managed, my voice hoarse. Now. Liam took a deep breath, glancing at the curious faces around us before leaning in. I've known for years, he said. Since high school. I saw you at the bonfire on Cannon Beach, the one where you and Elena were dancing by the fire. You were laughing, and I couldn't look away. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. I stared at him, my mind racing to piece together memories I'd buried. High school. Liam Harper, the guy every girl wanted, the one who always seemed to linger a little too long when we talked. I'd chalked it up to him being friendly, nothing more. I'd been so caught up in Elena, in building a life with her, that I hadn't noticed. I moved away after graduation, Liam continued, his voice steady but laced with pain. Tried to forget. Got married, had a kid, but it never went away. When I moved back to Astoria last year, I saw you at the hardware store, and it all came rushing back. Elena reached for my hand, but I pulled away, my head spinning. And you? I asked her, my voice sharp. What's your part in this? She swallowed hard, tears brimming. Liam came to me a few months ago. He was a mess, Elliot. He told me everything. How he felt about you. how he didn't know how to live with it. I didn't know what to do. I thought I could help him figure it out. By sneaking around? I snapped, my anger flaring again. By lying to me? It wasn't like that, she said, her voice trembling. I was trying to protect you. I didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me? I laughed, bitter and hollow. You let me think you were cheating. You let me think I was losing you. I know, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. Liam leaned forward, his voice urgent. This is my fault, not hers. I begged her not to tell you. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to face you. I looked between them, my wife and the man who'd just confessed he loved me, and felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. I'd come here to confront a cheater, to save my marriage. Instead, I was staring at a truth I didn't know how to process. The rain kept falling outside, relentless, like it was trying to wash away the life I thought I knew. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. I need air, I said, and walked out, leaving them both behind. The street was empty, the rain soaking through my jacket as I leaned against my truck. My breath came in sharp bursts, each one carrying a question I couldn't answer. How had I missed this? How had I lived with Elena for 8 years and not seen the distance growing between us? And Liam, how could a man I barely knew carry a torch for me all this time? I thought of our life together, Elena and me. The late nights fixing up our little house by the Columbia River, the mornings we'd walk the beach with our dog, the plans we'd made for kids someday. It had felt solid, real. But now, every memory was tinged with doubt. Had she ever loved me the way I loved her? Or had she been hiding her own truths, just like Liam? The cafe door opened, and Liam stepped out, his coat pulled tight against the rain. He didn't approach, just stood there, watching me. I'm sorry, he said, his voice carrying over the storm. I never meant for this to happen. Then why did you come back? I asked, my voice raw. Why didn't you stay gone? He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving mine. Because I couldn't. Not anymore. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to swing at him, to blame him for everything falling apart. But standing there, rain dripping from his face, he looked as lost as I felt. And that was the worst part. I didn't know what to do with that. The rain didn't let up as I drove home, the wipers slashing across the windshield like they could cut through the mess in my head. Liam's words echoed, each syllable a weight I couldn't shake. I'm in love with you. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, trying to focus on the road, but all I could see was his face. Those blue eyes, raw and honest, staring into mine. When I pulled into our driveway, the house looked smaller, like it belonged to someone else's life. Elena's car wasn't there. She'd stayed at the cafe, or maybe gone to her sister's. I didn't know, and for the first time in years, I wasn't sure I cared. I sat in the truck, engine off, letting the rain drown out the silence. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena. I'm at Mia's. We need to talk, but I'll give you space tonight. I didn't reply. Inside, the house was too quiet. Our dog, Rusty, thumped his tail against the couch, his brown eyes tracking me as I paced. I poured a glass of whiskey, then another, but it didn't dull the ache. I kept replaying the last 8 years, searching for cracks I'd missed. Elena's late nights at the community center, her sudden interest in yoga classes, the way she'd started locking her phone. I'd thought it was just life, marriage settling into routine. Now, I wondered if she'd been protecting me or hiding herself. I sank onto the couch, Rusty's head in my lap, and let my mind drift to Liam. High school came back in fragments. Him tossing a football on the beach, his laugh cutting through the crash of waves. He'd always been there, on the edges of my life, but I'd never looked twice. I was straight. I'd always been straight. So why did his confession feel like it was rewriting something inside me? The doorbell rang, sharp and jarring. Rusty barked, and I froze, half expecting Elena. But when I opened the door, Liam stood there, soaked to the bone, his coat clinging to his shoulders. Can we talk? He asked, his voice steady despite the shiver in his frame. I should have slammed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. You've got 5 minutes. He followed me in, dripping water onto the hardwood. Rusty sniffed him, then retreated to his bed. Liam didn't sit, just stood by the fireplace, his hands shoved in his pockets. I know you hate me, he said. I don't blame you, but I need you to understand. Understand what? I snapped, crossing my arms. That you've been lying to everyone? To your wife, your kid, to me. His face tightened, pain flashing in his eyes. I didn't lie to you. I never got the chance. And my wife, ex-wife, she knew. We split 2 years ago. She saw it before I did. How I couldn't let you go. I stared at him, the whiskey burning in my stomach. So what? You came back to Astoria to what? Ruin my marriage. No, he said, stepping closer, his voice low and urgent. I came back because I was tired of running. Tired of pretending I could live without knowing if there was a chance. I didn't plan to tell Elena. It just happened. She was there, and I was drowning. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You expect me to feel sorry for you? No, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. I expect you to hate me, but I'm not sorry for loving you. I'm only sorry it hurt you. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I turned away, staring at the framed photo of Elena and me on our wedding day, her smile bright, my arm around her like I could keep her safe forever. Get out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Liam didn't move. Elliot, Get out, I roared, spinning to face him. He flinched but held my gaze, and for a moment, I saw everything he wasn't saying. The years of silence, the weight of a truth he'd carried alone. Then he nodded, turned, and walked back into the rain. I didn't sleep that night. The whiskey ran dry, and I lay on the couch, Rusty's snores the only sound besides the storm. My mind churned, caught between Liam's confession and Elena's betrayal. I kept circling back to her. How she'd known, how she'd kept it from me. Was she protecting me, like she said, or was she protecting herself? By morning, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I drove to Mia's house, Elena's sister, a small bungalow on the edge of town. Elena answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed, her hair a mess. Elliot, she said, stepping onto the porch. I didn't think you'd come. I need answers, I said, my voice flat. No more lies. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Ask me anything. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, the question burning my throat. You knew how he felt, and you hid it. What? She looked away, her gaze fixed on the wet street. I was scared. Scared of what it would do to us. To you. I thought if I helped Liam, if I listened, maybe he'd move on, and we could go back to normal. Normal? I scoffed. You think this is normal? Letting me think you were cheating? I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice breaking. I love you, Elliot. I've always loved you. But I saw how Liam looked at you, and it made me question everything. What if I wasn't enough? What if you? What if I what? I cut in, my heart pounding. You think I'd just leave you for him? I didn't even know Elena. I know, she whispered, tears spilling. But I saw the way you looked at him sometimes, back in high school. Not like you wanted him, but like you saw him. Really saw him. And I was terrified that if you knew, you'd see something in yourself you didn't want to face. Her words hit harder than Liam's confession, slicing through years of certainty. I thought of those moments, glances I'd brushed off, conversations that lingered too long. Had there been something there? Something I'd buried so deep I didn't even recognize it? I need time, I said finally, turning back to my truck. I can't do this right now. She nodded, her voice small. I'll wait, Elliot. However long it takes. As I drove away, her words echoed alongside Liam's, tangling in my mind. I didn't know who I was angrier at, her, him, or myself. All I knew was that the life I'd built was unraveling, and I wasn't sure I could put it back together. The next few days were a blur of gray skies and sleepless nights. I stayed in the house, avoiding Elena's texts, ignoring the calls from friends who'd no doubt heard about the scene at the Anchor Cafe. Astoria was small, gossip spread faster than the tide. Rusty was my only company, his quiet presence a tether to something normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. I kept replaying Elena's words. I saw the way you looked at him. Had I looked at Liam differently? I sifted through memories, trying to find evidence, but all I found was confusion. I'd loved Elena since I was 18, built a life with her, planned a future. I wasn't the kind of guy who questioned himself. I fixed boats, drank beer with my crew, paid my bills. So why was Liam's confession lodged in my chest like a splinter? On the third day, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I drove to the docks, where my fishing boat, the salty dawn, bobbed against the pier. The air smelled of salt and diesel, grounding me. I climbed aboard, checking lines and nets, letting the familiar work steady my hands. But my mind wouldn't quiet. I kept seeing Liam's face, the way he'd stood in my living room, rain-soaked and vulnerable, offering a truth I hadn't asked for. Footsteps on the dock snapped me out of it. I turned, expecting one of my crew, but it was Liam, his hands in his pockets, his expression cautious. "Heard you'd be here," he said, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk?" "You've said enough," I muttered, tossing a rope aside. "What do you want now?" "To explain," he said, his voice steady. "Not for me. For you." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think you know what I need?" "No," he admitted, stepping onto the boat. "But I know what it's like to be stuck in your own head, trying to make sense of something that doesn't. I've been there, Elliot. For years." I glared at him, but he didn't back down. His eyes held mine, steady and unflinching, and for the first time, I noticed the lines around them, the weight he carried. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just a man, as lost as I was. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. "Talk." He took a deep breath, leaning against the railing. "When I was 19, I left Astoria because I couldn't face myself. I knew I was different, but I didn't have the words for it. I got married, had a daughter, tried to be the guy everyone expected. But every time I saw you, in a photo, in a memory, it was like a piece of me woke up. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't want to hear this, didn't want to feel the pull of his words. But they landed anyway, stirring something I couldn't name. So you came back to what? Blow up my life?" "No," he said, his voice breaking. "I came back to find mine." The words hung between us, heavy as the fog rolling in from the sea. I turned away, staring at the water, trying to anchor myself to something solid. "I'm not like you," I said finally. "I love my wife." "I know," he said softly, "and I'm not asking you to stop. I just needed you to know the truth. Whatever you do with it, that's up to you." He stepped off the boat, his boots thudding against the dock. "I'm staying at the Lighthouse Inn," he said. "If you want to talk, you know where to find me." I didn't respond, didn't turn around. I listened to his footsteps fade, the sound swallowed by the lapping waves. When I finally looked, he was gone, and I was alone with the sea and a question I didn't know how to answer. That night, I called Elena. She answered on the first ring, her voice tentative. "Elliot, we need to talk," I said, my throat tight. "In person." She arrived at the house an hour later, her eyes searching mine as she stepped inside. Rusty greeted her, tail wagging, but she barely noticed. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I should have told you everything." "Yeah, you should have," I said, sitting on the couch, my hands clasped. "But I need to know why you didn't. What were you so afraid of?" She sat across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. "I was afraid of losing you," she admitted. "Not just to Liam, but to yourself. I've seen you struggle, Elliot, when your dad died, when the business went under. You shut down, you pushed people away. I thought if I told you about Liam, you'd pull away from me too." Her words stung, not because they were wrong, but because they were true. I'd always been good at building walls, keeping people at arm's length. Even Elena, sometimes. "So you lied instead," I said, my voice low. "I didn't lie," she said, tears welling. "I just didn't know how to say it. I thought I could fix it, make it go away. But I was wrong." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I'd loved for years, flawed, human, scared. I wanted to be angry, to blame her for everything, but I couldn't. Not entirely. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I don't know," she said, reaching for my hand. This time, I let her take it. "But I want to try, if you do." I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if I could. Liam's confession had cracked something open inside me, and I wasn't sure what was on the other side. The next week was a tightrope walk. Elena moved back into the house, but the air between us was fragile, like we were both waiting for the other to break. We talked about the weather, the dog, the bills, but never about Liam. His name was a shadow, lingering in every pause, every glance we didn't hold. I wanted to fix us, to go back to the way things were, but his confession had lodged itself in my mind, a question I couldn't unask. I threw myself into work, spending long hours on the salty dawn, repairing nets and scrubbing decks until my hands ached. The crew noticed my silence, but didn't push. They were good guys, Jake, who'd been with me since the beginning, and Carlos, who told bad jokes to keep us sane. But even their banter couldn't pull me out of my head. I kept seeing Liam's face, hearing his voice. I came back to find mine. One evening, as the sun sank into the Pacific, I found myself driving to the Lighthouse Inn. I didn't plan it. My truck just took me there, like it knew something I didn't. The inn was a weathered building on the edge of town, its sign flickering in the dusk. I sat in the parking lot, my heart pounding, telling myself to leave. But I didn't. Liam answered the door in a t-shirt and jeans, his hair mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Elliot," he said, surprise softening his voice. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, stepping inside. The room was small, cluttered with books and a half-packed suitcase. "I don't know why I'm here." He gestured to a chair, but I stayed standing, too restless to sit. "You don't have to know," he said. "Just talk to me." I paced, my boots scuffing the worn carpet. "I can't stop thinking about what you said. It's messing with my head. I'm married, Liam. I love Elena. So why can't I let this go?" He watched me, his eyes steady, like he'd been waiting for this. "Because it's not about me," he said. "It's about you. Something in you is waking up, and it scares the hell out of you." "I know, because it scared me too." I stopped pacing, my chest tight. I'm not like you." "You don't have to be," he said, his voice gentle. "You don't have to be anything. But you're here, Elliot. That means something." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sank into the chair, my hands covering my face. "What am I supposed to do with this?" I asked, my voice muffled. "My whole life is with Elena. She's my home." Liam knelt in front of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, but he didn't touch me. "You don't have to choose," he said. "Not now, not ever. But you can't keep running from yourself." I tried that. It doesn't work. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man behind the confession, not the golden boy, not the threat, but someone who'd been fighting the same questions I was, for years. His eyes held no judgment, only a quiet strength that made my chest ache. "I need time," I said finally, standing. I don't know what this is." He nodded, rising too. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As I left, the night air hit me like a slap, sharp and cold. I drove home, my mind a tangle of Elena's tears and Liam's steady gaze. When I walked into the house, Elena was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up, her smile tentative. "You're home," she said, like it was a question. "Yeah," I said, my voice hollow. I wanted to tell her where I'd been, what I was feeling, but the words stayed trapped. Instead, I kissed her forehead, a reflex, and went to bed early, lying awake as the questions churned. The next morning, I found Elena at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee in her hands. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed, but there was a resolve in her I hadn't seen before. "We can't keep doing this," she said, her voice steady. The silence, the tiptoeing. "We need to figure out what we are, Elliot." I nodded, sitting across from her. "I know. I don't know where to start." She reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. "Start with the truth. Whatever it is, I can handle it. I just need you to be honest." I took a deep breath, the weight of Liam's confession pressing against my ribs. "I went to see Liam last night," I said, watching her face. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't pull away. I needed to understand why he said what he did, why it's messing with me. "And did you?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it's not just about him. It's about me. I'm questioning things I never thought I would. She nodded, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. I've known you for 10 years, Elliot. I've seen you at your best, your worst. I know there's more to you than you let yourself see. And if Liam's part of that, I'm not going to stand in your way. Her words broke something in me, a dam I'd been holding back. I don't want to lose you, I said, my voice cracking. You're my family. And you're mine, she said, tears spilling. But we can't be family if we're not honest. Whatever you're feeling, we'll figure it out together. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope, not for answers, but for the possibility of finding them together. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling, not of our marriage, but of the walls I'd built around myself. Elena and I talked more than we had in years, raw, messy conversations that left us both exhausted but closer. She didn't push me to define what I felt for Liam, and I didn't have the words anyway. But her willingness to sit in the uncertainty with me, to hold space for my confusion, was a lifeline. I avoided Liam, not out of anger, but because seeing him felt like stepping too close to an edge. Work kept me busy, long days on the salty Don, hauling crab pots and navigating choppy waters. The sea was predictable, unlike my thoughts. But even there, I couldn't escape him. A memory would surface, his laugh at a high school bonfire, the way he'd looked at me in the rain outside the cafe, and I'd lose my rhythm, dropping a line or missing a buoy. One Saturday, Elena suggested we go to the Astoria Sunday Market, something we used to do before life got complicated. The market was alive with color, vendors selling fresh clams, handmade soaps, and driftwood art. Elena linked her arm through mine, her warmth steadying me. You're quiet, she said, glancing at me. What's going on? I hesitated, watching a busker play a soulful tune on his guitar. I keep thinking about what you said, about seeing something in me I didn't. I'm trying to figure out what that is. She squeezed my arm, her eyes soft. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just don't shut me out, okay? I nodded, but my gaze drifted across the market, and there he was, Liam, standing at a booth selling local honey, his daughter tugging at his hand. She was maybe 6, with his blue eyes and a bright pink raincoat. My chest tightened, and I looked away, but Elena had seen him too. Go talk to him, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You need to. I wanted to argue, but she was right. I couldn't keep running. I crossed the market, my boots heavy on the cobblestones. Liam looked up as I approached, surprise flickering across his face. Elliot, he said, his voice warm. This is Mia. He ruffled his daughter's hair, and she grinned up at me. Hey, Mia, I said, managing a smile. You like honey? She nodded, holding up a jar. It's for pancakes. Liam laughed, and the sound hit me like a wave, familiar and disorienting. What brings you here? He asked, his eyes searching mine. I don't know, I admitted, shoving my hands in my pockets. Just needed to see you. Mia ran off to look at a nearby booth, and Liam stepped closer, his voice low. I've been thinking about you, he said, wondering how you're holding up. Not great, I said, my voice rough. But I'm trying. Elena and I were talking. It's helping. He nodded, his expression unreadable. I'm glad. She's good for you. The words stung, not because they were wrong, but because they were selfless. He wasn't fighting for me, wasn't pushing. He was just there, steady as ever. Why are you like this? I asked, frustration bubbling up. Why do you make this so damn hard? His lips twitched, almost a smile. Because I care about you, Elliot. Always have. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Mia ran back, breaking the moment, and I used it as an excuse to leave. But as I walked back to Elena, his words stayed with me, a quiet pulse beneath everything else. That night, Elena and I sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge over the Columbia River. Rusty lay at our feet, snoring softly. Did you talk to him? She asked, her voice careful. Yeah, I said, staring at the water. He's not what I expected. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her hair brushing my cheek. What did you expect? Someone selfish, I said. Someone trying to take you away. But he's not. He's just honest. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You're allowed to feel something for him, Elliot. It doesn't mean you love me less." Her words cracked something open, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted, "but I know I don't want to lose you." "You won't," she said, her voice fierce. "We're stronger than that." I wanted to believe her, but the truth was, I was terrified. Not of losing her, but of losing myself, of stepping into a part of me I'd never faced. For the first time, I let myself wonder what it would be like to stop running, to let Liam's words settle, to see where they led. The days stretched into weeks, and I found a fragile rhythm. Elena and I rebuilt our routines: morning coffee, walks with Rusty, quiet evenings watching old movies. But Liam was always there, a quiet current beneath the surface. I didn't see him, didn't call, but his presence lingered in the questions I couldn't answer, the feelings I couldn't name. One afternoon, while I was repairing a net on the salty dawn, Jake clapped me on the shoulder. "You okay, boss?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "You've been out of it for weeks." I shrugged, focusing on the knots. "Just life, man." He didn't push, but his silence said he knew there was more. Later, as we docked, I saw Liam's car in the lot, a familiar silver sedan. My heart kicked up, and I told Jake to handle the cleanup. I found Liam leaning against his car, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "You stalking me now?" I asked, half joking, but my voice betrayed my nerves. He smiled, a small, tired thing. "Just needed to see you. Mia's with her mom this weekend, and I couldn't stay away." I leaned against the hood next to him, the metal cold through my jeans. "You make a habit of this? Showing up where you're not invited?" "Only for you," he said, and there was no teasing in his voice, just raw honesty. I looked at him, the wind tugging at his hair, and felt that pull again. Something deep, something I'd been fighting. "What do you want from me, Liam?" I asked, my voice low. "Really?" He turned to face me, his eyes searching. "I want you to be happy. Whether that's with Elena, with me, or on your own. I just want you to stop hiding from yourself." His words cut deeper than I expected, slicing through years of denial. I'd spent my life building walls, against my dad's expectations, against the town's gossip, against anything that threatened the man I thought I was. But Liam saw through them, and that terrified me. "I don't know how," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the waves. "I don't know who I am without her." "You're still you," he said, stepping closer. "You're the guy who rebuilt this boat from nothing, who makes Elena laugh like no one else, who's been carrying this town on your back. You're enough, Elliot. You always have been." For a moment, I let myself imagine it, letting go, stepping into the unknown, seeing where this feeling led. But the weight of my life, of Elena, of everything I'd built, pulled me back. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "Not now." He nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. "I'll wait," he said simply, and walked away, leaving me alone with the sea and my own heart. That night, I told Elena everything. We sat on the couch, Rusty between us, and I poured out the confusion, the fear, the pull I felt toward Liam. She listened, her face calm, but her eyes bright with tears. When I finished, she took my hand, her grip fierce. "I love you," she said, "and I'm not going anywhere. But you need to figure this out, Elliot. Not for me, not for Liam, for you." Her words stayed with me as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, I let myself feel it, the spark of something new, something I'd buried long ago. It wasn't just about Liam. It was about me, about the parts of myself I'd never let see the light. The next morning, I called Liam. "Meet me at the beach," I said. "Cannon Beach. Tonight." He didn't ask why, just said, "Okay." When I hung up, I felt lighter, like I'd taken the first step toward something true. The sun was setting over Cannon Beach, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Haystack Rock loomed in the distance, a silent witness to the waves crashing against the shore. I stood on the sand, my boots sinking slightly, waiting for Liam. Elena had stayed home, her blessing quiet but firm. Go. Find what you need. Liam arrived as the last light faded, his silhouette sharp against the horizon. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, his hands in his pockets. You picked a good spot, he said, his voice carrying over the wind. It's where it started, I said, remembering that high school bonfire. The night he said he first saw me. Felt right. He nodded, stepping closer, his eyes searching mine. What's this about, Elliot? I took a deep breath, the salt air sharp in my lungs. I've been running my whole life, I said. From my dad, from this town, from myself. I thought marrying Elena, building a life, would make it all make sense. But it didn't. Not completely. He stayed quiet, letting me find the words. When you told me how you felt, it broke something open. I continued. Not just about you, but about me. I've spent so long being who everyone expects. Husband, fisherman, good guy. But I don't know who I am when I'm alone. Liam's eyes softened, but he didn't interrupt. I stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. I don't know what this means, I said, my voice steady despite the tremble in my chest. I don't know if I'm like you, but I feel something when I'm with you. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. For a moment, he just looked at me, his face unreadable. Then he smiled, a small, radiant thing that lit up the dusk. That's enough, he said. For now, that's enough. We stood there, the waves crashing, the world narrowing to just us. I didn't know what came next, whether I'd stay with Elena, explore this with Liam, or walk a different path entirely. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the questions. I was ready to live them. Back home, Elena was waiting on the porch, a blanket around her shoulders. She stood as I approached, her eyes searching mine. How'd it go? She asked, her voice soft. I sat beside her, taking her hand. I told him the truth. I said that I feel something, but I don't know what it is yet. And I told him I'm not ready to lose you. She nodded, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. You don't have to choose, Elliot. Not between me and him. Not between who you were and who you're becoming. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. I looked at her, the woman who'd stood by me through every storm, and felt a love so deep it ached. But I also felt something new, a freedom to explore, to question, to be. Liam had given me that, not by forcing me to choose, but by showing me I didn't have to. As the stars blinked to life above us, I realized the meaning of it all wasn't in the answers, but in the courage to ask the questions. With Elena's hand in mine and Liam's truth in my heart, I was ready to start.